Eliza's days were filled with shadows. Not the fun kind that dance on walls when the sun peeks through leaves, but the heavy, dark kind that lived in her heart. Her small cabin felt more like a cage, each creak of the floorboards a reminder of her hardship. Her owner, a cruel man named Silas, made sure of that. Hope, her little girl, was Eliza's only sunshine. Hope's laughter, though rare, was like a tiny bell, chasing away some of the darkness. Eliza worked tirelessly, mending clothes and tending a small garden, all to keep Hope safe and fed. But Silas always found a way to take more than he gave. Fear was Eliza's constant companion. Fear of Silas's anger, fear for Hope's well-being, fear of what tomorrow might bring. She tried to shield Hope from the worst of it, wrapping her in stories of brave princesses and kind animals. But Hope was clever, and Eliza knew she understood more than she let on. One sweltering afternoon, Silas announced that Eliza and Hope were to be sold. Eliza's heart leaped into her throat. Sold. The word echoed in her mind, a terrifying storm cloud. What would become of them? Where would they go? The thought of being separated from Hope was unbearable, a pain so sharp it stole her breath. All the joy seemed to drain out of her, leaving her as empty as the night sky before the stars appear. Her world was about to get much, much smaller. The auction was a blur of shouting voices and judging eyes. Eliza clung tightly to Hope's hand, her knuckles white. The air was thick with the smell of sweat and dust, and the noise felt like a physical blow. People poked and prodded at her, inspecting her like an animal. Eliza tried to block it all out, focusing only on Hope's small, worried face. Hope, usually so bright and curious, was silent and scared. She buried her face in Eliza's skirt, her little body trembling. Eliza squeezed her hand reassuringly, whispering promises that everything would be all right, though she didn't believe it herself. Silas stood nearby, a cruel smirk on his face. He enjoyed their humiliation, their helplessness. He called out Eliza's qualities to the crowd, exaggerating her skills while downplaying her spirit. He described Hope as strong and healthy, reducing her to nothing more than property. Each bid felt like a stab in Eliza's heart. She watched as men raised their hands, bartering for her and her daughter's lives. The thought of being separated from Hope grew stronger with each passing moment, tightening its grip on her chest. She prayed silently, begging for a miracle, for someone to stop this nightmare. She couldn't imagine life without Hope. Hope was her world, her reason for breathing, and the thought of losing her was a fate worse than death. Thomas had come to town on business, hoping to buy some lumber for his growing farm. He certainly hadn't expected to witness such cruelty. The auction was a chaotic scene, but it was the way Eliza and Hope were being treated that turned his stomach. He saw the fear in Eliza's eyes, the desperation in her grip on her daughter's hand. It was a sight that would forever be etched in his memory. He watched as men leered and made crude remarks, their words like stones thrown at Eliza and Hope. Thomas felt a surge of anger, a burning desire to protect them from this injustice. He couldn't understand how people could be so heartless, so blind to the suffering of others. He clenched his fists, his heart pounding in his chest. Thomas was a simple man, a farmer who valued hard work and honesty. He wasn't wealthy, but he had a strong sense of right and wrong. He believed that everyone deserved to be treated with respect and kindness, regardless of their circumstances. Seeing Eliza and Hope being treated like property ignited a fire within him. He knew he couldn't stand by and do nothing. He had to help them, somehow. He looked around, feeling the weight of everyone's gaze, but his decision was made. He would not let this stand. Taking a deep breath, Thomas raised his hand. A hush fell over the crowd. All eyes turned to him, a mixture of surprise and curiosity on their faces. He wasn't a wealthy landowner or a powerful businessman. He was just a farmer, his clothes worn and his hands calloused. But his voice was firm when he spoke. "I bid," he announced, his voice cutting through the silence. The auctioneer, a shifty-eyed man with a greasy smile, seemed surprised. He quickly recovered, though, and called out Thomas's bid, encouraging others to raise the price. Thomas hesitated for only a moment. He knew he was taking a risk. He didn't have much money, and buying Eliza and Hope would mean sacrificing his dreams of expanding his farm. But he couldn't ignore the plea in Eliza's eyes. He couldn't turn his back on their suffering. So, he bid again. The price climbed higher and higher, and the other bidders began to drop out, one by one. Silas watched with a growing frown, realizing that this farmer might actually win. Thomas gritted his teeth, determined to see this through. He knew he was in over his head, but he couldn't back down now. The thought of Eliza and Hope falling into the wrong hands spurred him on. This was more than just buying property, it was about saving lives. With a final, desperate bid, he waited, the silence stretching, hoping it would be enough. Going once, the auctioneer called, his voice dripping with anticipation. Going twice. He paused, scanning the crowd for any last-minute bids. Silence. Thomas held his breath, his heart pounding in his ears. He could feel Eliza's gaze on him, a mixture of hope and disbelief in her eyes. Sold, the auctioneer finally declared, slamming his gavel down with a resounding crack. Sold to the gentleman for. He announced the final price, a sum that made Thomas's head spin. He had done it. He had actually won. A wave of relief washed over Eliza, so powerful it almost knocked her off her feet. She looked at Thomas, tears welling up in her eyes. She couldn't believe it. Was it possible? Could they actually be free? Thomas walked towards Eliza and Hope, his face etched with a mixture of exhaustion and determination. He reached out a hand to Eliza, his touch gentle and reassuring. "You're free," he said, his voice low but clear. "Both of you. You don't belong to anyone anymore." Eliza stared at him, speechless. The words seemed too good to be true. She had dreamed of this moment for so long, but she had never dared to believe it could actually happen. She looked at Hope, who was clinging to her leg, her eyes wide with confusion. "Come on," Thomas said, offering a small smile. "Let's get you out of here." He turned to the stunned crowd and repeated, louder this time, "They are free." Thomas led Eliza and Hope away from the auction grounds, the stares of the crowd burning into their backs. He took them to a small, simple cottage on the outskirts of town, a place he sometimes used when he was in the area for business. It wasn't much, but it was safe, and it was theirs, at least for now. He showed them inside, pointing out the small kitchen, the 2 beds in the main room, and the washroom in the back. He had already stocked some food, bread, cheese, and some fruit, enough to keep them going for a few days. Eliza and Hope stood hesitantly in the doorway, unsure of what to do. They were used to taking orders, not making choices. Eliza looked around cautiously, her eyes darting from one corner of the room to another. She couldn't shake the feeling that this was all a dream, that at any moment, she would wake up back in Silas's cabin. Hope, however, was a little bolder. She cautiously stepped inside, her eyes wide with curiosity. She ran her hand over the rough wooden table, a small smile playing on her lips. It was different here. It felt lighter. Thomas watched them patiently, understanding their hesitation. He knew it would take time for them to trust him, to believe that they were truly safe. He just hoped he could provide them with the security and comfort they so desperately needed. He busied himself with starting a fire in the hearth, the crackling flames a small beacon of warmth and hope in the unfamiliar space. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, Eliza began to relax. Thomas never demanded anything of her. He simply offered kindness and support. He brought them fresh milk and eggs from his farm, and he spent hours talking to Hope, telling her stories and teaching her about the animals. Eliza watched them, a knot of suspicion slowly unraveling in her chest. She started helping Thomas with small chores around the cottage, mending his clothes and cooking simple meals. She found comfort in the familiar tasks, a small sense of normalcy returning to her life. One evening, as Hope slept soundly, Thomas sat with Eliza by the fire. He didn't press her, but he gently encouraged her to share her story. Hesitantly, she began to speak, her voice barely a whisper. She told him about Silas's cruelty, the beatings, the constant fear. She spoke of her dreams for Hope, of a life where she could laugh and play without worry. As she spoke, Thomas listened with compassion, his eyes filled with understanding. He didn't interrupt, didn't judge. He simply offered her a safe space to unburden herself. By the time she finished, Eliza felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had never told anyone the truth about her past, and sharing it with Thomas felt like a release. She looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. For the first time in a long time, she felt a flicker of hope, a belief that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. She was starting to trust this man. Thomas, seeing Eliza's hidden talents, bought her a small sewing kit. Eliza had always loved to sew, creating beautiful things from scraps of fabric in secret. Now, she could do it openly. She started by mending clothes for Thomas and Hope, but soon, she was designing her own patterns, creating beautiful dresses and quilts. Thomas also brought her books and taught her how to read. Eliza had always longed to learn, but Silas had forbidden it. Now, she devoured every book she could get her hands on, her mind expanding with each new word. She started reading stories to Hope, her voice filled with emotion and expression. Eliza blossomed under Thomas's care. She stood taller, her eyes sparkled with intelligence and confidence. She was no longer the frightened, beaten woman she had been. She was strong, resilient, and full of hope. She realized she had a voice, and she wasn't afraid to use it. She started teaching Hope to read and sew as well, passing on the skills that Thomas had given her. She wanted Hope to grow up knowing that she was capable of anything, that she could achieve her dreams no matter what obstacles she faced. Eliza knew that education and skill were the keys to a better future, and she was determined to provide them for her daughter. She was building a new life, brick by brick, filled with love, learning, and laughter. Hope, who had always been quiet and withdrawn, transformed into a bright and energetic little girl. Thomas enrolled her in the local school, where she quickly made friends. She loved learning and was eager to soak up all the knowledge she could. She excelled in her studies, especially in reading and writing, skills she had already started to learn from her mother. She participated in school plays, joined the choir, and even started playing games with the other children during recess. For the first time in her life, Hope felt like a normal child. She wasn't afraid anymore. She wasn't constantly worried about her mother's safety. She could simply be a kid, exploring the world around her and enjoying all the simple pleasures of childhood. Thomas and Eliza watched her thrive, their hearts filled with joy. They had given her the gift of freedom and opportunity, and she was making the most of it. They knew that she still carried the scars of her past, but they were determined to help her heal and build a brighter future. They surrounded her with love, support, and encouragement, creating a safe and nurturing environment where she could grow and flourish. Hope's laughter filled their small cottage, a constant reminder of the incredible journey they had all taken together. It was a sound they cherished more than anything in the world. The cottage, once a place of refuge, slowly transformed into a home. Thomas, Eliza, and Hope began to function as a family, each contributing in their own way. Thomas worked tirelessly on his farm, providing for them all. Eliza kept the house clean and cooked delicious meals, her sewing skills becoming a source of income as she started taking orders from the townspeople. Hope brought laughter and joy into their lives, her infectious energy filling every corner of their home. They shared meals together, talking and laughing, their voices blending together in a harmonious chorus. They celebrated birthdays and holidays, creating new traditions and memories. They supported each other through thick and thin, offering comfort and encouragement during difficult times. Thomas became a father figure to Hope, teaching her about farming and nature. Eliza became a mother to Thomas, caring for him and offering him unwavering support. And Hope became the glue that held them all together, her innocent love binding them as a family. They were an unlikely family, bound together by circumstance and choice. But they were a family nonetheless, and their love for each other grew stronger with each passing day. They had found solace and happiness in each other's company, creating a haven of love and acceptance in a world that had once seemed so cruel. Their bond was unbreakable. Not everyone in town was happy about their unconventional family. Whispers followed Eliza whenever she went to the market. Some people disapproved of Thomas, a bachelor, living with a woman and child who were not his relatives. Others gossiped about Eliza's past, judging her for things she couldn't control. One day, a group of men confronted Thomas in town, questioning his motives and making rude remarks about Eliza. Thomas, usually a gentle man, stood his ground. He defended Eliza's honor and made it clear that he wouldn't tolerate anyone disrespecting her or Hope. The schoolmaster, a stern man named Mr. Abernathy, called Eliza into his office. He expressed his concerns about Hope's upbringing, implying that Eliza was not a suitable mother. Eliza, her newfound confidence wavering, bravely defended herself and her daughter. She spoke of her love for Hope, her determination to provide her with a good life, and the values she was instilling in her. Even some of Hope's schoolmates teased her, calling her names and spreading rumors about her past. Hope, heartbroken and confused, turned to Eliza and Thomas for comfort. They reassured her that she was loved and valued, regardless of what others said. They encouraged her to ignore the bullies and focus on her studies. They emphasized that what mattered most was what they thought of each other. The family was soon to learn that their peaceful existence would always be challenged by outside perceptions. One afternoon, Silas arrived in town. He had heard rumors of Eliza's newfound happiness and was determined to reclaim her and Hope. He confronted Eliza in the market, demanding that she return to him. He threatened her, reminding her of his power and control. Eliza, though frightened, stood her ground. She refused to go back, declaring that she was a free woman and that she would never allow him to harm her or Hope again. Silas, enraged by her defiance, tried to grab her, but Eliza fought back. She used her sewing skills to defend herself, wielding her scissors like a weapon. Thomas arrived just in time, intervening before Silas could inflict any serious harm. He stood between Eliza and Silas, his eyes blazing with anger. He warned Silas to leave them alone, promising to protect Eliza and Hope with his life. A tense standoff ensued, the entire town watching in silence. Silas, realizing that he was outnumbered and outmatched, finally backed down. He vowed revenge, promising that he would make them pay for defying him. Eliza, shaken but undeterred, stood tall. She had faced her abuser and won. She had proven to herself that she was strong and capable, that she could protect herself and her daughter. This encounter solidified her resolve to never be a victim again. Her courage shone brighter than ever before. The townspeople, who had once been skeptical, began to see Eliza in a new light. They admired her courage, her strength, and her unwavering love for her daughter. They witnessed her kindness and generosity firsthand, as she used her sewing skills to help those in need, mending clothes for the poor and creating blankets for the sick. Slowly but surely, the community began to embrace Eliza, Thomas, and Hope. They started inviting them to town gatherings, offering them help with chores, and treating them with respect and kindness. The schoolmaster, Mr. Abernathy, apologized to Eliza for his earlier judgment, acknowledging that she was a loving and capable mother. Hope's classmates, influenced by their parents' changing attitudes, stopped teasing her and started treating her as a friend. She was no longer an outcast but a valued member of the school community. The local church offered Thomas and Eliza a place to share their story, hoping to inspire others with their resilience and compassion. Even Silas's threat seemed to fade into the background as the community rallied around them, creating a protective shield of love and support. They had proven that love, kindness, and courage could overcome even the darkest of circumstances. The town was becoming a better place because of them. Their small family had made a big difference. Inspired by the support they received, Eliza and Thomas decided to pay it forward. They started a small fund to help other women who had escaped abusive situations, providing them with shelter, food, and job training. Eliza used her sewing skills to teach these women a trade, empowering them to become self-sufficient and independent. Thomas offered his farming skills to teach them how to grow their own food, ensuring that they would never go hungry again. Hope, with her infectious enthusiasm, helped them learn to read and write, opening up a world of opportunities. Together, they created a haven for those in need, a place where they could heal, learn, and rebuild their lives. Their small cottage became a symbol of hope and resilience, attracting women from all walks of life. The community rallied behind them, donating resources and volunteering their time. The townspeople realized that by helping others, they were making their own community stronger and more compassionate. The cycle of kindness and compassion spread throughout the town, transforming it into a place where everyone was valued and supported. They had built a legacy of love and generosity, one that would continue to inspire generations to come. They proved that even the smallest act of kindness can make a world of difference. Years passed, and the small cottage continued to be a beacon of hope in the community. Eliza and Thomas watched Hope grow into a beautiful and intelligent young woman. She excelled in her studies, earning a scholarship to a prestigious university. She dreamed of becoming a doctor, wanting to help others heal and live healthy lives. Thomas and Eliza beamed with pride as they watched her embark on her new journey. They knew that she would achieve great things, and they were grateful to have played a part in her success. Eliza continued to sew, her creations becoming renowned throughout the region. She used her skills to raise money for various charities, always eager to give back to the community that had embraced her. Thomas continued to farm, his land flourishing under his care. He taught young people about sustainable farming practices, ensuring that future generations would have access to healthy food. They often sat on the porch in the evenings, watching the sunset and reflecting on their incredible journey. They had faced hardship, adversity, and judgment, but they had emerged stronger and more resilient. They had found love, acceptance, and purpose in each other's company. Their lives were filled with joy, gratitude, and a deep sense of fulfillment. They had created a life that was truly unimaginable, a testament to the power of love, freedom, and second chances. Silas's threats were long forgotten, replaced by the warmth of community and the promise of a bright future. Hope returned to their town a few years later, a doctor just as she had dreamed. She opened a clinic, dedicated to serving the poor and underserved, ensuring that everyone had access to quality healthcare, regardless of their circumstances. Eliza and Thomas watched with pride as Hope tended to her patients with compassion and skill. They knew that she was making a real difference in the world, carrying on their legacy of kindness and generosity. The small cottage, now filled with memories and laughter, remained the heart of their family. They welcomed visitors from all over the world, sharing their story of hope and resilience. People came to be inspired, to learn, and to witness the transformative power of love. One sunny afternoon, as Eliza, Thomas, and Hope sat on the porch, surrounded by their loved ones, Eliza smiled. She looked at Thomas, her eyes filled with gratitude. She looked at Hope, her heart overflowing with love. She had come so far, overcome so much. She had found freedom, happiness, and a life beyond her wildest dreams. "We did it," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "We created a new life. An unimaginable life." Thomas reached out and took her hand, squeezing it gently. "We did it together," he replied, his eyes shining with love. Hope leaned in and hugged them both, her heart filled with gratitude. "I love you both," she said. "More than words can say." And as the sun set, casting a warm glow over their small cottage, they knew that they had truly found paradise on earth. Their new life was, indeed, unimaginable. It was perfect.